I can't give guys this or this, and that's on. They have to come with that. That's got to be on them. Like, they got to bring the heart and the competitiveness that's needed, and it's all the little things. They got to bring that. They got to want to bring that. We can bring the X's and O's, and I can go in there and yell and scream at them all I want. That doesn't do anything either.
Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. That was Craig Berube. After yet another embarrassing, soul-snatching loss for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Whatever optimism I think you had left for this team has got to be evaporated. I can't envision a scenario where there are a group of people now who still feel as though this is simply a coaching issue, or this is simply a couple of roster pieces, or this is simply a general manager, or whatever. This is a tipping point for the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're even seeing Austin Matthews look exasperated. Called the effort on Saturday night embarrassing. That right now, the way that this team is playing is embarrassing. And yeah, it's a tipping point moment for the Toronto Maple Leafs. It feels especially uncomfortable because all of this has come home to roost during a period where you feel like there's less stability up top than maybe there has ever been. Like, including when Kyle Dubas was fired and it felt like, oh, man, Brendan Shanahan's trying to grab whatever lieutenants he can, grab a new general manager, try to steady the ship. You still felt like, hey, there was a clear hierarchy. They were going to bring in a new general manager. He was going to look at things with a fresh set of eyes, blah, 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 blah. This group went from, as I was outlining the other day with Anthony Petrelli, a front office that was so deep with so many hockey minds that the concern was, are there too many cooks in the kitchen? Versus now where it does feel very rudderless up top. I'm not really sure what Brad Treliving's powers are heading into this deadline, how much what he is saying goes, what the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs holds, because how could you? How could you know? They have a GM who seems like a lame duck GM. They've got a coach who seems like a lame duck coach who was empowered to have a lot of opinions on this roster during the offseason and is kind of pushed forward as someone who's going to contribute outside of purely his coaching role. And there is very, very, very little clarity as to what the direction of this franchise should be. Again, people knew that eventually this was going to come home to roost. You trade that many picks away, you invest this much in one talented core that, albeit did not get things done, but still had reason to believe that they could. That year over year of pilfering draft picks and pilfering prospects and making deadline trades and making, frankly, sacrifices financially and term-wise to a lot of these players to build around them, including being older on your blue line, like that's a byproduct of that, was going to catch up with you. What you didn't hope for is this, where it all caught up at once and it felt like, boy, you are really on the verge of something here that is pretty dark and bleak. For a while, we were able to do this notion of a retool. Like, let's put it this way. When the Leafs were coming out of the Olympic break, many of us, including myself, were actually hoping that the team was not going to tear off a bunch of wins. Because we knew, or at least we believed, no is strong, even like that's playing the results a little bit, that many of us believed this team was not it, that they were not a contender, and that winning games would only be harmful because it would allow this front office to potentially just move off of a piece or two or sell you on the idea that these guys were finding something, point to the Christmas break or the Christmas schedule and say, there was this moment, maybe we can replicate this again. The whole idea that they had never faced adversity, they'd never been in this position. They used to coast to playoffs. What happened if they had to battle into a playoff spot? They were hardened by that schedule. Could they get in? Could they do something different? Many of us never believed in that theory, myself included. And it's why these losses were welcome, because you wanted them to start to strip away the fat. You wanted them to start to say, okay, let's be realistic about this roster. But what you're seeing over the course of these 3 games is these aren't just losses. These are pathetic beatdowns. These are wire-to-wire beatings, essentially, outside of the first, 3-4 minutes of the Toronto Maple Leafs Ottawa Senators game where they scored on a power play early. These are emotionless. These are ugly. The talent is low. The effort is low. There's really nothing that you can point to. And Matthews and Nylander, I believe, have become somewhat sympathetic figures in all of this, in that people do look at the roster around them and there's less criticism going their way. Like, Matthews hasn't scored a goal in 7 games. Nylander certainly has had a ton of poor play and has not aided the situation really at all. And yet I don't think that they're getting the normal critique that stars on this roster have when there have been these lulls in the past, right? Like, this Hart stuff has been a part of this core from basically their 3rd season. Their 3rd season, people wondered, like, hey, did these guys have that extra it factor? Like, is that going to develop with these guys? Like, is this going to happen? But what they did have was enough talent up top, including the guys that are still here who were playing better at the time, like across the board. Tavares was younger and better. Matthews was scoring more goals. Nylander was playing better than he is this season for at least the last, half of it. They had Mitch Marner. They were able to paper over their problems with top-end talent during the regular season. And so any deficiency that they might have had as a group, anything when it came to like the intangibles question, it didn't get oversized the way that it is now, because they had all of that talent that was able to click in a certain way on any given night. Now they don't have that. Now they've got an old blue line that is full of guys that don't really work, including they're missing one of their most important pieces. But he's, an older guy who's dealt with some pretty significant injuries, and now there's real question marks about his future. The goaltending that was elite last year is not to blame by any stretch of the imagination, but it certainly hasn't been nearly as spectacular as it was a year ago. I don't think anybody feels the same measure of confidence in Woll and Stolarz. And again, like, how do you blame them when you're getting outshot 16-2 in a first period, right? When they're getting hung out to dry against teams night in, night out, it's kind of hard to evaluate them. And their forward group, I don't know what the positive story is this season. Like, what is the most positive story? You got Bobby McMahon, who is still sitting on 1 in 20 goals, and they're potentially going to either overpay him or get back an asset, it seems, that is not overly exciting, that he doesn't appear to be fetching a first-round pick. Like, is it Nick Robertson, who, showed a little bit better this year, but ultimately, like, you need to have Nick Robertson on your lineup next year? Matthews has had a down year. Nylander's had a down year. Tavares looks a year older. Nyes has not fulfilled the promise of what you hope for when you hand a guy a contract like that. Like, I'm pressed to think about what it is. Like, what is the story in the forward group that you're most excited about? Is it Easton Cowan, the 20-year-old who basically just didn't play hockey for a month, was mishandled by the organization, has been yo-yoed around in terms of his minutes and his role and what the expectation is for him? Like, all of this has come home to roost at a horrible time, and it feels very bleak. And all these conversations about retool, when you watch games like this, it becomes a harder and harder sell. And so now there are conversations, like Elliot Friedman mentioned on headlines on Saturday night, that the Leafs are expanding the scope of players in which they would look at in a trade, guys who have term. He did mention that that does not include the likes of Nylander, Matthews, right, the top-end talent. So I think what we're kind of assuming from that is that if there's a decent enough offer on just about anybody that isn't a part of that main core, you can have them. The problem is they're not a very good team now, and the idea that they're going to remove some of the long-term talent that this team has, like the Oliver Ekman-Larssons of the world who have had good seasons, the Brandon Carlos of the world who are still right-shot defensemen who can kill penalties and provide you with like real NHL minutes, is that going into an offseason that you're saying you're going to retool, I'm not really convinced that you're going to be able to find better options at every one of these positions. Like, there's too many holes in the boat to fill. And especially if you don't have that level of top-tier talent performing in a certain way. And, like, I think that we've done this Marner conversation a million different times. Like, Vegas isn't very good. I don't think anybody thought hey, it would be great to just lose Mitch Marner for nothing, but that it was the time to move on. And if they could relitigate things, they probably would have moved off of it sooner. Also, he didn't want to be here, so it's kind of a moot point. But ultimately, I think widening the scope needs to be what I've been alluding to these last couple of shows, which is that this team is closer to a rebuild than a retool. And it's difficult because they don't control their pick next season. But yes, it is top 10 protected. So there's got to at least be a conversation of, hey, do we just have to accept that maybe that's going to be the situation here? You're going to have a conversation with your captain. You're going to have a conversation with William Nylander in terms of the wants that they have, the desires of them moving forward. Again, couldn't be in a worse spot in terms of things coming home to roost with Austin Matthews with only 2 years left on his contract moving forward. And your hope that you can keep him because, again, you lose him or you trade him. I'm not really sure how long it is before you're back here. But I just don't know how you're supposed to look at these puzzle pieces and figure out that next year you can be back to being a contender because I've said it all along. The goal is not to get into the playoffs. I mean, sure, you got to get there to have a chance, but the goal is to be a contender, and the Leafs look nowhere near. And so widening the scope, I think it has to include a little bit more than trading a couple of guys with contracts. It has to be with the thought of what is going to be the long-term direction of this franchise because you might have to pick a lane sooner than you expected. Ben Nicholson-Smith of At the Letters is down in spring training. He joins me now to talk a little Blue Jays. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
JD, I'm doing great. Here in Florida in kind of an alley near a metalworker shop.
Yeah,
but
it looks
you know
like
what?
you're in an alley near a metalworker shop. Like that's that's
where I am.
Yeah, that's what this looks like. This is actually like very like high school boyfriend video of just like going off to the side of the school and taking a little conversation with your sweetheart, which is me.
Well, yeah, exactly. The thing is, we're not allowed into the Jays player development complex yet, but it opens really soon. So this is where it makes sense for me to be right now, and they're thankfully not seeming to notice me. So this is good so far.
Okay, so first of all, congrats on Max Scherzer because you were the first guy that had it. You were the guy that talked about how the contract was becoming. I can't remember what the verbiage was. I think it was like more serious. Contracts have started to become more serious, and he signs just like a day or two later. Why do you think the Jays waited until they did to sign Max? Like, why did this become something now when they actually had more clarity on their starting pitchers? They have the depth that they had, and there were already conversations like Eric Lauer going, hey, actually, I want to start, and Barrios wants to start. And the only question mark that you really had was how long it was going to take for Shane Bieber to ramp up.
Right. Yeah, I think it probably took some time just because, like, it's not the most lucrative offer, especially for a guy who's made $360 million in his career. My guess would be, and we haven't heard from Max Scherzer yet, but my guess would be like early in the offseason in November, he's probably not considering a $3 million guarantee. And, you know, he also might not have been in the mindset to want to even engage in those talks, just given that he is 41 years old. He probably wants to consult with his wife and, you know, make sure that they're on the same page about what the next steps are. And he's been around long enough to know that typically those one-year deals for starting pitchers happen in the new year anyway. So I think it kind of makes sense that it would happen at this time when Justin Verlander was signing, around the time that Chris Bassett was signing. So here they are, and it's a pretty small commitment when you think about, okay, this team has a payroll over $300 million. So what they're paying Max Scherzer is really less than 1% of their total payroll.
Yeah. Again, it makes total sense from the Blue Jays standpoint in terms of adding more depth. And it makes total sense from Max Scherzer's standpoint when he factors in where his family wanted to be and the fact that he still wants to play for a competitive franchise, one that he had a lot of fun playing with. The bigger question, I think, at this point now is this is a guy who people have said, I don't know who had this quote, maybe it was you, maybe it was Shy, but that he doesn't want to be a mascot. Like, that's not what he's coming here to do. He's not a mascot. And if you look at his contract structure, which I don't know if many people did, how the incentives work, it's like he basically gets $1 million every 10 innings he pitches, which I don't know about you, but I know Max Scherzer has a lot of money, right? Like, he's very wealthy. That's why he would accept a $3 million contract and not try to press for more and more and would agree to these incentives. But if it was you or I and every 10 innings that we pitched, we got an extra $1 million, I would actually be trying to pitch in set innings. I wouldn't just be like, yeah, bullpen, like I'll come in. I'm sure he will do those things. And just like the way it's structured reads to me as this guy wants to start ball games. This guy wants to be able to take the ball and get 5 innings apiece and build towards those extra $1 million. That's what he's done his entire career. And so, like, I was reading this Trey Savage piece you wrote yesterday, right? Where it's like, hey, the Blue Jays are going to ramp this guy up where there's going to be a pitch count limit to start the season. It could be like 50 pitches that this guy throws, and then maybe it's Eric Lauer that comes to the bullpen for a swingman role. But is your sense early on, and I know Max isn't even down there yet, so maybe you guys are going to get more of an opportunity to speak to him, but that ultimately what could play out for a team that has a bunch of guys that they want to handle with a little bit of kid gloves to start the season, that when he first arrives, that potentially it could be in that swingman role?
I think it's possible, and it kind of depends on what his readiness is. We're led to understand that Max Scherzer has been throwing bullpens already and has been facing live hitters already. So that would put him in a position to potentially just jump right into the spring training mix and get him ready reasonably soon. At the same time, I mean, as you know, the Jays have a lot of moving pieces in the rotation already. And my understanding, like when I initially wrote that piece, my understanding was that, hey, if he's ready 3-4 weeks into the season, that would be totally fine. So, I don't think the Jays are relying on Max Scherzer out of the gate or Shane Bieber or Trey Savage, really. And that's where it gets interesting, because that means that they do rely more on a Jose Barrios. They do rely more on Cody Ponce. Like, there's no question Cody Ponce is in the rotation. Jose Barrios now stretched out to 4 innings. So this is where, even Eric Lauer might end up being that piggyback type companion to Trey Savage as they get things started here. So lots of moving pieces, and we're going to learn a little bit more about Scherzer and like what he wants and what his expectations are. I'm sure he'll be very clear on that because he cares about every last detail. But yeah, at this point, like I think that they can mix and match a little bit, and they're going to have to, because Bieber and Savage aren't going to be going full bore at the very start of the season.
This is the only part that I find confusing, though, in this entire mix, is they're pushing out this idea that last year, I don't think that they've been saying packaging it like it was a mistake, but they're clearly acknowledging that it wasn't a pure meritocracy last season when they decided to go to 5 and Barrios was in the 5. And that's why they're doing meritocracy talk now. Like, that's why they have to establish it, is because it clearly wasn't that way a year ago, right? Yeah. So the messaging is meritocracy, meritocracy, meritocracy. And yet I'm not exactly sure how you're supposed to find out how Max Scherzer fits into that puzzle without being able to see more of him. Like, how you're supposed to know, hey, okay, 3 weeks into the season, Max Scherzer's ready to go. We're starting him in a game and we're taking somebody out, unless it's very clear that one of those guys is not performing very well. So it becomes a little bit more like, okay, so if the dudes that are in there right now to start the season, which I think we have a pretty clear picture of now at this point, right? Like the 5 guys that are healthy, the 5 guys that are being warmed up sort of normally outside of the Savage thing, but it looks like more of a swingman role attached to him, that they'll get the first opportunity. That it would seem to me anyways, like those guys all have a job, but as soon as one of them falters, or if one of them stumbles out of the gate, that's where it opens up the opportunity for a guy like Max Scherzer to take a spot.
Yeah, I think that's a good read. And so that's where you do have one more starter than you have spots. And
2
that's
eventually.
Where yeah, I mean, even 3 if you think Lauer's good, or, depending on what you make of this entire group. So, yeah, that's where they're going to have a tough decision to make. And I don't think they want to go 6-man. So I think they're basically presuming that someone's going to need a break, or someone's not going to be as effective, or someone's going to be hurt. And so, if they're saying meritocracy, then that would have to mean that, all right, Jose Barrios doesn't pitch that well in his first couple starts, then they would be prepared to make an adjustment. And the same for Cody Ponce. So even though those guys are clearly ramping up to be starting pitchers, and there's no ambiguity about what their role is or how the Blue Jays see them, following their logic, if this is a meritocracy, then if Scherzer's ready, and I agree with you that they're going to first use Scherzer as a starting pitcher if possible, then they would be displaced. One of those guys would be displaced by Scherzer. But at the same time, if Scherzer's, let's say he's doing a rehab start at AAA, and he's sitting 92 as opposed to 94.5. Like, that's the point where they actually use Scherzer out of the bullpen. So, and I think that's a possibility that, is on the table here. As much as he is a starting pitcher, and that's the intent, you know, I do think they are taking more of that meritocracy approach this year than they did a year ago, when it was like, we're sticking with Barrios no matter what. You know, we're bumping Eric Lauer even though he's performing great. So I do think there's been a shift compared to 2025.
Well, the other thing with Scherzer, though, too, is, all right, a year ago he had the thumb stuff, right? And he came in and, like, never forget. He gives up, 2 runs in the first inning of his first outing? And then he settled in. And he finished with, I think, like 3 or 4 innings pitched, and it looked fine. But he came back to the dugout, and he was, like, shaking the thumb, and then he hit the IL and disappeared for a while. And many of us had a conversation like, hey, is that it? Like, did we just pay the $18 million to watch Max Scherzer pitch for a few innings and see him in a Blue Jays uniform and say two? And of course, the season played out the way that it did. But the only, I guess, like, weird piece of the Scherzer stuff to me is the idea, like, okay, if he's facing live batters now and he's throwing now, or they start him in a rehab assignment, but it's early on in the season, that the Jays would want him to come up and be a starting pitcher from, like, April, May onwards? That seems like a very long season for a 42, 43-year-old.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a lot. And I think, like, with all of this stuff, like, the Dodgers do come to mind because the way they manage their pitching staff is so unique, and they just stack pitchers upon pitchers. And, you know, to start this season, maybe it's Blake Snell who's on the injured list. Last year, you know, it was Ohtani. They sent Roki Sasaki to the minors for extended stretches. Glasnow is going to be hurt at times, or certainly was last year. So, you know, not that the Jays are framing it that way, because that's not at all how they describe it, but you can't help but notice the similarities where you just have more starters than spots. And it's interesting, too, because in the industry, there has been a shift, and people will tell you this, that, you know, in the past, you would just stop at 5 starters, whereas now, if there's a way to get more than 5 starting pitchers, it's something that even the players are open to. Like, this is where someone like Cody Ponce or Max Scherzer, they're free agents. They're joining a team that already has an abundance of starting pitching, and yet they know that they're going to have opportunities to start because teams need so many different pitchers to get through a season. And I'm sure that will be the case with the Blue Jays. And to be honest, JD, like, this might sound like a little bit of a hot take, but I actually think, like, if anything, the Jays don't have enough starting pitching. Like, I actually think they're still a bit light, even with all of this, because you go, like, you know, not to go too doomsday, but you go, like, 1 or 2, like, little injuries or little things that pop up early in the season, all of a sudden it's Grant Rogers starting against the Boston Red Sox. And so, you know, this is a team that could really use one of those minor league pitchers to pop off, whether it's a Chad Dallas, whether it's a Ricky Tiedemann. That's something that would really benefit them, because as things stand now, I actually kind of think they are just slightly light on starting pitching.
Well, the case that you would make if you're coming at it from that position is you've got a pitch count on you, Savage. You have Jose Barrios, who, he sat 93 in his last start, which is much better than 92, which he was with the cold weather and the velo being down. But, like, he's coming off of a bicep injury, and the average velocity for a starting pitcher in 2025 is 94. So if you're going to be below the league average in your Jose Barrios, you're going to have to pitch, like, you're going to have to really, really hit your spots. I don't think that that's anywhere close to a guarantee. And he still feels personally to me like the biggest bubble guy. You have Cody Ponce, who is throwing it hard and who just had a lot of success overseas. But yeah, it's not proven at the major league level. Like, if it doesn't work out, no one can sit here and be like, this is the most shocking outcome ever that Cody Ponce didn't really work out. You've got Shane Bieber with the mystery ailment in terms of, like, what the timeline is, right? We're all kind of assuming, like, oh, it's going to be a month before he ramps up. Like, he's going to ramp up in the season. But again, is anybody going to be shocked if this ends up being longer than we originally anticipated, especially given the track record of this strength and conditioning staff, where timelines got a little wonky last year, to say the least? Is it going to be a little interesting if Max, like, you can absolutely get there with the thinking of they're going to actually need someone outside of them. So, of course, these things, as everybody likes to say, often figure themselves out. But it is a more interesting group from the standpoint of if everyone is healthy, because the difference with the Dodgers is, like, one, they had a lot more injury-prone guys. Two is they ended up, like, actually pretty thin with their starting rotation last year. Like, there were real moments of the Dodgers season. There's a reason why they played in a wild card game, right? Like, they played in a wild card series because they couldn't get starting pitching healthy at pretty much any point of the season. But if the Blue Jays do end up in a spot where everybody is healthy all at once and everybody is willing to go, there's like less clarity in terms of how guys fit into some of those other roles, I would say, than some of the other organizations.
I agree with that. I think there are relatively simple solutions to be found.
Yep.
And nothing is going to be like ideal, but I do think that you could put Cody Ponce in the bullpen for a week and just say, you know what?
Sure.
We're skipping him for a start. We want to make sure that we're managing his workload as he transitions back to MLB. So I think that would be one approach that they could follow. And you could do the same thing with Barrios even. You could say we're skipping you for a start. We want to make sure that we're managing your health. I mean, that biceps injury was pretty significant for him last year. He told me yesterday that, he's feeling a lot better, but that it took him like 3 months to get back to where he wanted to be. So, that's not a quick process. And he's like really, really ready to go. It's kind of interesting. Like 4 innings over the weekend. That's like at a time that most pitchers are throwing 1 inning. Jose Barrios is out there throwing 4 innings at a time. I was like, hey, like opening day is a month away, right? Like, what's next here? Like, you're pretty much good to go. But he said because he wanted to be ramped up for the WBC, he was really stretched out. And now he might not end up going at all. Probably won't end up going, but he's still at that level. So, there are worse things in the world than giving those guys a little bit of a breather, even if it is, framed as just pitching out of the bullpen for a week or two. They come in relief here and there, and then, inevitably someone else will need that breather and they can cycle back into the rotation.
Yeah, listen, that's the ultimate outcome that I want to see. Like, I want to see the Blue Jays be healthy. I want to have these conversations. I hope that it ends up working out well. But it is fun to think about more so what happens if everyone's healthy more than it is like, all right, well, this guy's clearly in because this guy's hurt. And that's not a position that you want to be in where you're starting a season with a whole bunch of injuries to your starting rotation anyway, or a bunch of question marks to your starting rotation. You would rather have it where it really is a meritocracy where a couple of different guys feel like, yeah, for big stretches of the season, they're pitching for their jobs. The biggest question out of all this, though, is, again, the piece that you wrote on sportsnet.ca over the course of the weekend, which is they're finally coming clear with the Yesavage plan, right? They had ramped him up slowly, and there was a little bit of mystery surrounding what exactly was going to happen. We were all sort of assuming, like, hey, it's going to be a bit different for this guy this year. There's no way that they're going to be pushing him for 200 innings pitched, right? Like, that's not going to be the game plan, trying to get him back to the postseason healthy. I think the question to me, like the biggest one is, because he seems bought in, right? So, and he's a young guy. He's not really proven over the course of regular season. And also just his demeanor as a guy seems pretty obvious that he would be team first. And like the Blue Jays are taking him out of baseball games after 50 pitches, even if he's going well. I don't think that it's going to be drama. He's not going to be Max Scherzer on the mound screaming at John Schneider, telling him to go back into the dugout, right? But there does become a question, and like this is so far on down the line, but do you think that this is something that lasts the vast majority of the season? Like when you're talking to people, how cautious is the impression you're getting back in terms of how long this plan could go?
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly don't know. I can give you my best guess, which is, okay, he threw 140 innings last year, right? Including the postseason, which is pretty substantial. And that is a good thing because it gives him a really strong base to build off of. I think they're conscious of the fact that his offseason was really short. The Jays obviously played into November. Yesavage was pitching the entire way and was really like a huge, huge part of what they were trying to accomplish. So I think that they're going to be very mindful of that. And I think that ramping them up slowly is a way to extend that off season. Now, they intend to be in the postseason. They intend to be, a very significant team in October. So they want him ready for those games and those reps. Now, I would expect that means a month of, relatively cautious workloads for Trey Yesavage, where, they're talking about, well, I actually asked John Schneider, I was like, hey, would you be okay with if he's at 3 or 4 innings? And Schneider said, yeah, we'd be okay with that. That's not what they're hoping for. But he acknowledged that they would be okay with that, which I do find to be somewhat telling. So let's say that he's starting the season at 45 to 60 pitches, 3 or 4 innings, something like that for a few turns. Then that could be a way to just limit the entire workload. And from there, that could be a way to, ease him into something more like 165, 170 innings, because at that point you're adding 25, 30 onto what he did, and then you can kind of go from there. So, because he actually pitched a lot last year, in a way that actually puts them in a good position. It's not like he's going to have to pitch, 3 innings the entire season. I would think that, by May, he's more like 5 innings, and then you can build up even further from there.
Yeah, I still think that you're not going to really see the kid throw 7 innings all season long. Like, I think that what you saw with Skeens last year, that's what I compared it to, is Skeens obviously throwing closer to 100 pitches and hit that mark a few different times, but because he throws for so many strikeouts, the pitch count gets higher throughout his outings. And if you watched Pirates games, like I enjoy watching him pitch, right? Like, who doesn't? You tune into a lot of those games, and there was like a different level of caution there where he's still throwing hard, he's still going great, but they would be going, yep, you reached your 6 innings, you're out of here. I would be kind of thinking that Savage is going to be very similar this year, where if they can get him to that range throughout the course of the regular season, they're never going to really let him go past that.
Well, I think part of it, too, is like how efficient can he be with his pitches?
Yeah.
And this ties to a lot of guys in the staff. Like, you think about Dylan Cease. Part of the reason that he doesn't throw a lot of innings is because he throws a lot of pitches to get outs, and that does lead to strikeouts. Sometimes he's living on the edges of the zone. An 0-2 count becomes 2-2. Then eventually he gets the strikeout, but it takes him 6 or 7 pitches. So, Dylan Cease, not an especially efficient pitcher, even though he's a very, very good pitcher. With Savage, we're still getting to know him, and what hitters are going to do against him. The league is still trying to adjust, so we don't necessarily know how efficient he is going to be. Someone like Skeens, Skubal, Crochet, the truly dominant pitchers in Major League Baseball, have a lot of 11, 12, and 13 pitch innings, and that allows them to throw more innings relative to how many pitches they're throwing, and then that is perfect. I mean, that's the best case scenario. So if Savage can get some 11, 12 pitch innings in there, then he'll be going 5 innings from the jump. Because I really do think the way the team is going to do it, it's probably going to be, ups and downs do impact it, but total pitches are really a huge part of the equation when it comes to, just that back of the envelope management of a pitcher's workload.
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, this is more motivation for Trey Savage to cut down on the walks, which are one of the big question marks with him. It's like, hey, man, like this is actually where I think they run into a little trouble with this strategy, is for a kid that had problems with his walk rate leading into his major league career, that when you're capping a guy at this many, pitches thrown, and you get into a situation where it's like, okay, how many times is he going to be able to get? You're like, all right, if he's getting to 3 innings at that, it's fine. But it's the nights where, all of a sudden he was only able to get through 1 or 2, and now you're asking Lauer to cover that whole stretch between now without trying to tax your bullpen too much too early. Like, it's going to be pretty fascinating what he can actually do out of the gate, because on paper it sounds totally fine when you have that swing man, and that is up until things don't go well for you in some of those starts. But anyway, I want to move to some other things, because you threw in, you got to go, and you threw in your piece, just this kind of throwaway line, and I was like, oh no, that stands out to me. Springer talking about how he's stronger and that he's interested in helping more in the outfield this season. And that is kind of a bit of a thing for what is an already crowded outfield. But the idea that you could be maybe putting an Addison Barger at third base a little bit more, or having more flexibility, malleability with your roster, if Springer is supposed to play a little bit more in the outfield. But do you think that's lip service or reality?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a big step forward, and that's the reason I asked him about it, is because toward the end of last year, he did not play the outfield. Like, in the postseason, did not play the outfield. There were stretches, I think it was in September, he did still play the outfield a few times, but by the end of the season and into October, it was not an option. And John Schneider later revealed that was because Springer was dealing with a wrist issue that severely impacted his ability to throw. Now, Springer, when we asked Springer about it, he said, you know what, I don't want to get into it. Everyone's banged up. He didn't really shed a lot of light on it. And clearly he was able to tough it out with an incredible offensive season and postseason. So, that was never the question offensively, but it did limit them positionally. So I do think it's a good thing. And yeah, to be clear, I brought that topic to him. So it's not like he came up and he was like, guys, like, I'm back, I'm a center fielder.
Yeah.
But it's good to have that option. And to your point, like, let's say Okamoto, I don't know, he has a little bit of a sore hamstring. Vladdy has a little bit of a sore quad. Put them at DH, put Springer in the outfield. shift things around on the infield, and then you're backfilling with some better options as opposed to just, just making it up on the fly and having to bench Springer potentially. So yeah, I think it's a very positive thing for the Jays, but to a certain degree, I also want to see it to believe it.
Well, it's nice to have flexibility, right? Like, who wouldn't rather have a healthier George Springer, a more capable George Springer? That's true. Of course you would want that. But still, he's 36 years old. He's had injuries in his past. And if we're being honest, by the time we got to the World Series and we were sitting there in Game 7, George Springer was one of the guys where it felt like he was the most worn down out of everyone. He didn't feel quite like the same guy in that series as he did earlier in the season when he was like their most important hitter. And so for me, it's like I would rather see him just DH as much as possible. And if he's healthy, it's like, good, keep it that way. Let's have you stay healthy for the entirety of the season rather than try to get cute with it and go, oh, well, he says he's feeling good. You put him in the outfield, and then all of a sudden it's his hamstring that goes. And I'm like, yeah, now you lost one of your most important bats.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, like this is, to me, it's like it's an option you have. It's an option you have. And maybe it's late in games. Maybe he starts once every couple of weeks.
Sure.
Keep him in the mix. But fundamentally, George Springer at 36, turning 37 years old, a guy with a 399 OBP last year, and what was it, 32 homers?
Yep.
Plus the Game 7, ALCS winner. Like, do not mess with that guy. He is way too important to the offense. But yeah, I think it's relevant because he really couldn't do it last year. And I think it's a positive just to have that option on the table.
So last one, you got to run. So I'm calling it this year's Alan Roden. And not in the sense of someone who, like, everyone is universally agree. Like, remember Alan Roden? Everyone got so excited. They were like, this guy is going to contribute. He's going to hit. And honestly, maybe he does have a good career with the Minnesota Twins. Maybe it's one that's a lot better than some of the guys on this roster. But more so, the premise is the bubble guy who you think has the best shot at impacting the team now. So there's really only two names, right? Maybe three, depending on how you feel about Jimenez. So out of the three guys that are sort of in the mix right now to be like that Alan Roden type, not in terms of level of excitement people had last year, but most likely to contribute on this team in a meaningful way this year based on what you've seen so far, is who?
Who are your three, first of all?
Well, I thought that there was only three. I thought that Jimenez, if he's in the mix, like that it's him, that it's Kasevich, and that it's Shrek.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah, I think that's a good read. Those guys are all close. I'm actually writing about this in the next couple of days at sportsnet.ca. So,
yeah. Who would I be missing?
No, I just wanted to, because I was going to say Kasevich, and I wasn't sure if he was included in your group, and it sounds like he is. And I think that, that play, I don't know if you saw it on the weekend, where he's like running behind third base, making a great defensive play. That shows you his defense. He was injured for a lot of last year, so didn't really fulfill that potential last year. But this guy can hit too. Like, he is seen as a viable big league hitter, and he's probably it's not like he's going to be an offensive superstar, but this is someone who can hold his own with the bat and play good defense at second, third, or short. That's a valuable player. And so right now, Leo Jimenez is in that mix for playing time up the middle, in the mix for a bench spot. And yet, I think Kasevich is someone we see in the major leagues at some point this year. And when you talk about, someone who could hold his own offensively and really bring that defensive value, that's a player who's really interesting in a way that, Eloy Jimenez, it's all offense. And I'm intrigued. We'll see. I'd be intrigued to see if that can become something. And I'm intrigued by RJ Shrek, who brings maybe a little bit of a balanced profile where he can handle himself in the outfield. Plus, he ran a 400 OBP in the minors. Like, this is someone who can probably step in at the major league level and be a legitimate strong side platoon option right from the jump. So I think all three of those guys are going to play in the major leagues at some point this year. But Kasevich is probably the one who intrigues me the most, big picture.
Yeah. By the way, I didn't include Eloy Jimenez because there's at least more of a baseline understanding of who that guy is. And like, what is he now? He's 28?
29.
29? Yeah, like he's an older player, and if you're bringing him up, it's very much like, hey, I know what this guy is, versus the Alan Roden was more of a unknown, where you went, oh, late bloomer, all the stuff that you're saying about Kasevich is the more Alan Roden stuff, where it's like, where was Alan Roden picked? It was like he was a late pick. It was this isn't really an expectation guy. Kasevich, that's the stuff that you're reading now. Is like, oh, if he wasn't hurt last year and the glove is so sick. And, I keep seeing stuff about how they're like, man, this guy's work ethic and the demeanor of this guy is very, very plus, plus, plus. And I can't help but feel like if they let Leo Jimenez go, that's a pretty strong indication that they believe that Kasevich can be like an impact player for them at some point this season because there's no options for Jimenez.
Great point. Yeah. And, they also let Ben Cowles back on waivers.
Yeah.
So, he was someone on the 40-man, an infielder with some big league time. He's gone now. So that also is a reflection in their confidence in both Leo Jimenez and Josh Kasevich. So, there are going to be those opportunities at some point, but I don't know, now that Trey Yesavage has debuted and now that Trey Yesavage has shown the kind of impact that he can have, beyond that, I don't know that there's huge impact for 2026 coming from the farm system.
No.
And that's okay. I mean, Trey Yesavage is considered a top prospect in and of himself, but just as far as setting expectations, I'm not expecting that there's hugely impactful players, but always happy to be wrong on that front if there is someone who can jump up and surprise.
Yeah, listen, this segment was not, or this question was not meant to be who is going to have huge impact. It's just who is going to have potentially the most out of that crop of players who are like right there on the fringes of, yeah, we're kind of the quad A guys. We're not really meant to be on this roster. You're not really hoping that we're on the roster, but if we have to be, you're most confident that they could actually be a contributor. And that seems to be kind of like the growing party line, is that Kasevich is a guy that a lot of people end up liking because the baseline of the defense is high enough that he has a major league skill set.
Yeah, that's where I land on it for sure. And I think Shrek too, like he's up there. Leo Jimenez, he's already had 80 games in the major leagues, right? So we've seen him a little bit more, and frankly, I mean, he just hasn't really hit to a high level.
Yeah. All right, Benny, you got to run. Hopefully they let you inside now. Let's
hope so.
They're going to open up the doors.
Otherwise I'll be here at this metal shop all day.
Yeah, the metal shop. See you, bud. Thanks for doing this.
All right. Thanks, man.
Ben Nicholson-Smith of At the Letters and, of course, senior Blue Jays reporter. Yeah. I'm kind of interested in that guy, like Kasevich, which I've been saying Kasevich. But now Kasevich, I hear from Ben. I'm like, okay, that's the way that we're doing this. And, okay, yeah, I don't think that one of the reasons why the Blue Jays had the successes they did last season is that they hit on some guys that we weren't really sure of, right? Addison Barger came up. He was unreal. Already he looks like someone that is super important to this baseball team. They hit on Nathan Lucas. Schneider had a good season. Clement had a good season. I would say that he was a little further removed from that given he had shown the defense at third base, but just like there was the season that he had in terms of becoming the all-time major league hit leader in the postseason and also one of the deadliest guys against lefties in Major League Baseball. Like that wasn't really maybe some of you saw it coming. I didn't see it coming. I didn't feel like that was a major point of conversation. So this year is different in that regard, as they've already found more of those guys. Those guys already, some of them feel blocked. Some of them you're not even really sure what their playing time is. So the idea that you're going to need more of those stories, not to the degree that you did a year ago. That said, yeah, it's nice to know who they've got in terms of the depth, because the infield specifically, and that's why I think that the Kasevich guy is the most intriguing. It's like they're not super deep there. The outfield feels crowded. Behind the plate feels like kind of a certainty, and you just have to hope that nothing ends up happening to Alejandro Kirk because there's such a huge drop-off there. The starting pitching, he can make the case, which he did, which is like, hey, they could actually even need more. But ultimately, the infield is an area where you look at it and go, yeah, I'm not really sure what the answers are if they were to suffer an injury to Andres Jimenez or to Ernie Clement. That's where it gets a little bit hairier. And good thing that those guys are been mostly healthy. Ernie Clement, as I've spoken to him multiple times about, is always very focused on his health and his longevity and making sure that he feels good throughout the course of a regular season and gets into the postseason healthy. He did last year. But yeah, that's probably the area where you feel like one of those guys is probably going to have to contribute at some point this season and hopefully can give you slightly above average play. Anyway, subscribe to this podcast, leave 5 stars, reach out anytime at JD Bunkis. I do want to hear from people today, especially about how they're feeling about the Leafs. I've got Dave Pagnotta on later to dive into, frankly, like why Berube is still here. I'm a little surprised that after those 3 games that they didn't do something. Why we're seeing a little bit more of a slow-moving deadline this season. I know we got the Panarin trade, but starting to feel a little bit more like it's going to be traditional, right? Or closer to it. And then, what the expanded scope means for the Leaf and some of the prices. But I do want to talk about an extremely dirty play that happened in the NBA over the weekend. And, the reason why I'm thankful for this team.
Tonight on Prime Monday Night Hockey.
We're back, baby.
The world's best are back to battle for a playoff spot.
He scores!
Flyers, Leafs. This should be great. Tonight at 7:30. Prime Monday Night Hockey. It's on Monday. It's only on Prime.
Bet365 is paying out before the final buzzer.
Check out Bet365's early payout for NHL hockey. When you bet on a team to win and they take a 3-goal lead, you get paid, no matter the final score. And with early payout, you could be on your way to a winning parlay.
Early payout. Just another reason why it's never ordinary at Bet365. An official betting partner of the NHL. Must be 19 or older, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit connexontario.ca. T&Cs apply.
A roll-up season report from Tim's. The forecast calls for all-inclusive getaways with sell-off vacations and Bass Pro Shops 2026 Sun Tracker pontoons. Play on the Cup and the app before March 22nd. Cups available for a limited time. Rules apply. Canada only. No purchase necessary. Visit the Tim's app for details.
This is the sound of the all-electric Toyota BZ, helping you recharge at a spa retreat weekend. And this is the sound of a BZ recharging from 10 to 80% in as little as 30 minutes. Two extremes, one BZ with high-speed charging. Now's the time to get yours. It's time to Toyota. Lease a 2026 BZ XLE front-wheel drive from $122 weekly for 48 months at 1.99% with $4,500 down. Includes a $4,000 incentive. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Ontario Toyota dealer today. Under ideal conditions when using DC fast charging.
Life's noisy enough. Everything demands your attention. So here's something rare. Silence. It's underappreciated, kind of like windows from Magic. With retractable bug screens that only appear when you need them, you'll never worry about a dirty screen ever again. While others add to the noise, Magic cuts right through it. Find out more at magicwindow.ca.
Measles has been on the rise in Canada. It's very contagious and spreads easily through the air. Measles is more than just a rash. It can lead to serious complications. Vaccination provides the best protection against measles. So now's the time to make sure your family's vaccinations are up to date. Let's stop the spread of measles. Learn more at canada.ca/measles. A message from the Government of Canada.
Why switch to a Leva Sleep adjustable bed today? Because it's up to 72% off today. The better bed. Adjust your side of the bed your way, their side of the bed their way, is up to 72% off during the Leva Sleep 72-hour sale today only. Wait, it's really the less than 72-hour sale now, but pretty soon it will be the 0-hour sale. So hurry in to Leva Sleep today before it's 0% off. Find our 6 showrooms at levasleep.com.
Discover more value at Loblaws and get unlimited groceries delivered with the PC Express Pass. Buy strawberries 1 pound for $1.99 each. Offer ends March 4th. Conditions apply. See flyer for details. Loblaws, proudly Canadian since 1919.
In Canada, opening a business bank account can take weeks. The fees on your account are endless, and your money earns nothing. Honestly, what the f***? We hear you, but your WTF is also why there's Float. Float is a complete finance platform with business accounts that open in minutes, charge 0 fees, and earn up to 4% interest. It's a business account that makes sense and money. So let's take back our WTFs and celebrate why there's Float. Open your account today at floatfinancial.com.
Hockey talk is fun. Money talk wins. Combine them to get the Financial Power Play podcast. I'm Brett Cranston, and on the Financial Power Play podcast, I interview pro players, hockey parents, coaches, and performance experts about hockey life and the financial decisions that come with it. Quick episodes, real stories, practical takeaways. Listen and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. Just search the Financial Power Play podcast with Brett Cranston.
By joining the skilled trades, you'll make a living while making places to live. With over 140 skilled trades to choose from, there's more opportunity than ever to create a stable career for today and tomorrow. building stronger communities right here in the place we call home. That's how we protect Ontario. Join the Skilled Trades. Learn more at ontario.ca/skilled trades. Paid for by the Government of Ontario.
Tonight on Prime Monday Night Hockey.
We're back, baby.
The world's best are back to battle for a playoff spot. He scores! Flyers, Leafs. This should be great. Tonight at 7:30. Prime Monday Night Hockey. It's on Monday. It's only on Prime.
Hey, it's Blake Murphy.
And I'm Matt Bonner.
Join us weekday mornings at 11 as we break down all things Toronto Raptors.
It's the Raptor Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and wherever you get your podcasts.
Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
All right, it's Leafs game day. Score a Popeyes chicken sandwich for only $6 in classic or spicy. Make it your new game day tradition. Get yours $6 chicken sandwich at a Popeyes near you. More on the Leafs at the top of the hour or in the next pod if you're listening to this. If you're a fan of the show, you know I'm a big fan of sports hate. I think it's good for games. I think there's really no downside to players and teams not liking each other. That was actually what made some of the Leafs Senators game kind of watchable, was when they started to have scrums and the two teams went, yeah, we don't really care for one another. I think, listen, the Sens are actually trying to play for a playoff spot, not just talk about it like the Maple Leafs are. They're playing with desperation, not just saying it in post games after they get obliterated by their opponents in their division. But the Oklahoma City Thunder, I hate more than any team in professional sports by like a pretty wide margin. Like I hate the Dodgers. I hate the Yankees. I really don't like the Los Angeles Lakers. They all pale in comparison. It's not close. I can't stand the Montreal Canadiens. Not close. Oklahoma City Thunder, number one with a bullet, far and away number one. Worst finals ever for me was last year, them winning the NBA championship. And especially the way that it happened. Anyways, whatever. Point is, I'm actually grateful for the Thunder because they are becoming the team in the NBA that other teams hate. They don't get along with everybody. They're not buddy-buddy with everybody. Teams despise them. We've got Wemby, who I believe in part came out of his shell because of his hate for the Oklahoma City Thunder, the way that they do things, the way that they interact. Listen, I find them to be like a very corny group of individuals. I think that that's actually kind of the way most people feel outside of this country because let's be real here. I don't think a lot of you are actually watching Shea and Lou Dort and until it gets to the finals and then you're wrapping the flag around him and that you're excited for it. That's great. But for those of us that follow the NBA on a night-to-night basis, the team is not exactly, I would say, loved by the NBA at large. There's a lot of different things about them that are annoying. And the idea that they've built this thing so well where they can keep this going for quite some time and that they're going to end up with this Clippers pick and they've got arguably the best general manager in like maybe all of professional sports to handle this, they're in a great spot. But they're unlikable. They're not a likable group of players, period. You can like them. I'm not saying you can't, Hamilton. I know Hamilton loves that team. I'm saying that most people don't love the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that extends to the NBA. They don't get along with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They don't get along with the Denver Nuggets. They certainly don't get along with the San Antonio Spurs. Those are the other three best teams in the Western Conference. They despise playing the Thunder. And you saw that this weekend when Nikola Jokic suffered what was one of the dirtiest plays that I've seen in a very long time in the NBA, and this is one where it like kind of looks innocuous. I know if you're a hockey fan and you watch that play, you're like, yeah, what's the big fuss about? He sticks his butt out a little bit, like no big deal. That's a 7-footer. Who's coming off of an injury. And Lou Dort is probably like, I would say at the very minimum, 245, 250 pounds. And it's not a basketball play. It's not an action where it's like you accidentally jumped under somebody's foot a little bit, which is also a dirty thing that you can do. That's why it's a flagrant foul now. That to me was like totally offside. The way that Jokic reacted was the proper way to react, which is what you just did was an intentional attempt to hurt me outside of a basketball play. You didn't even fake it where it's, I'm going up to the basket and you try to hit me hard. You catch me a little off balance. There's lots of dirty things that you can do in a basketball game. But that is like a hip check to the lower body of a 7-footer where you're trying to take out his knee, you're trying to take out his hip. That's an intent to injure play. That's not like an innocuous move that Lou Dort made. It's extremely, extremely, extremely dirty. Horrible play. And Jokic lost his cool. He flipped out. We saw the crazy eyes. We saw him and Kendrick Williams grab each other, and Dort gets tossed out of the game. And then their head coach is like, I can't even understand why that's a flagrant 2. Incredible stuff from the Thunder. They're hateable. And they're bringing real hate to the NBA. And we had this whole era where everyone was best friends. And we talked about AAU and how all these guys end up coming up together. And there's not enough true hatred. And we were looking back at the Celtics and the Heat and going like, man, I really liked it when we had this. And the Thunder are bringing that back. So thank you, Thunder. And I mean that sincerely. Thank you, Oklahoma City Thunder, for being such a, like an annoying team, such a dirty team, such a foul baiting team, such a corny team that other teams, and good, that matters. They're very, very good. That all the other teams hate playing you. Nobody wants to be your friends. And you've got a target on your backs the way that a champion should. I love it. I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for the fans. I think it's great for the gameplay. So let's see more of it. I can't wait for a series against any of those teams that I just mentioned. It's going to be must-see TV because there is going to be the added element of the stakes are higher when the players don't like each other and the teams don't like each other. Period. You can't tell me otherwise. Quick break. We'll come back, talk to Dave Pagnotta.
Tonight on Prime Monday Night Hockey.
We're back, baby.
The world's best are back to battle for a playoff spot. He scores! Flyers, Leafs. This should be great. Tonight at 7:30. Prime Monday Night Hockey. It's on Monday. It's only on Prime.
Hi, I'm Jessica from Speedy Glass. Did you know all it takes is a small rock to chip your windshield? And before you know it, that tiny chip can turn into a crack. At Speedy Glass, we can save your windshield before it cracks. A repair takes less than an hour, and if you're insured, it's free. Booking is simple. Just go to speedyglass.ca to choose a location and a time. Don't wait until it's too late. Book your appointment today at speedyglass.ca. Details and conditions at speedyglass.ca.
Speedy Glass Replace.
I'm the puck that just won't bounce your way.
I'm the gust of wind that makes the field goal miss.
I'm the final shot that bounces out. Yeah, that's me. I'm random. And before you bet more than you can afford to lose, remember, I'm always in play. Learn more at gamblingisrandom.ca.
When did sleep become a weakness? Hustle, bustle, grind, live it up. Sleep when you're dead, they say. And for what? To wear our eye bags like a badge of honor? To be more exhausted than our exhausted friends? Hard pass. Good sleep makes being awake so much more awesome. So next time you feel guilty for catching those Z's, hit snooze. Let's stop sleep shaming with Sleep Country. Learn more at stopsleepshaming.ca.
Did you know 2 in 5 Canadians will face cancer in their lifetime? Early detection can make all the difference. Whole Body MRI offers advanced medical scans using state-of-the-art AI-powered MRI technology, capable of detecting early-stage cancers and over 500 other conditions. Take control of your health. Visit wholebodymri.ca to book now. Again, that's wholebodymri.ca. Get scanned.
By joining the skilled trades, you'll make a living while making places to live. With over 140 skilled trades to choose from, there's more opportunity than ever to create a stable career for today and tomorrow. Building stronger communities right here in the place we call home. That's how we protect Ontario. Join the skilled trades. Learn more at ontario.ca/skilled trades. Paid for by the Government of Ontario.
With Rogers Satellite, your phone can keep you connected where it never could before. Out on the road with no bars. Deep into cottage country. Even while hitting the slopes. Send texts, call family on WhatsApp, plan your route with Google Maps, and more with Rogers Satellite, Canada's first and only satellite to mobile service from a wireless provider. No one covers Canada like Rogers. Sign up today at rogers.com/satellite. We got you. Rogers.
A serious car accident can turn your life upside down, but a team of trusted legal and medical experts can get it back on track. I'm David Himmelfarb, HimPro's managing partner. Let our team of highly rated injury lawyers build you a winning case fast to deliver a big settlement. This proven system for success is the HimPro Advantage, and it's real. Call 833-4HIMPRO or visit himpro.ca today. HimPro, serious results for serious injuries fast.
HimPro.
It's cold out there, folks. Minus 35. Fill up if you're going out today. And
leave the winter blues behind when you give and get away at Canadian Blood Services.
Escape to a donor center this winter and leave feeling a little lighter, brighter, and better. And when you book an Attend Blood or Plasma appointment, you have a chance to win round-trip tickets for two, courtesy of Air Canada Foundation. No donation required. Give and get away this winter. Book at blood.ca/getaway and experience what you get when you give. Conditions apply. See full draw rules for details.
In Canada, opening a business bank account can take weeks. The fees on your account are endless, and your money earns nothing. Honestly, what the We hear you, but your WTF is also why there's Float. Float is a complete finance platform with business accounts that open in minutes, charge 0 fees, and earn up to 4% interest. It's a business account that makes sense and money. So let's take back our WTFs and celebrate why there's Float. Open your account today at floatfinancial.com.
In Canada, over $1 billion is lost to scams and fraud each year. Scammers do more than steal our money. They disrupt lives. The stolen money is often used to fund serious crimes like human trafficking and terrorism. It's time to fight back. When someone you don't know asks for money or personal information, don't act. Stop. Check with a trusted source and talk about scams with others. Learn how you can stand against scams at standagainstscams.ca.
Tonight on Prime Monday Night Hockey.
We're back, baby.
The world's best are back to battle for a playoff spot. He scores! Flyers, Leafs. This should be great. Tonight at 7:30. Prime Monday Night Hockey. It's on Monday. It's only on Prime.
Hey, it's Blake Murphy.
And I'm Matt Bonner.
Join us weekday mornings at 11 as we break down all things Toronto Raptors.
It's the Raptor Show on Sportsnet 590 The Fan and wherever you get your podcasts.
CJCL Toronto.
Take a ride and you will see another dose of reality. It's your life that becomes a victim of me. Think I'm sick and you will see, because one good shot and you'll end up dead. Silence on the streets and it will never end. The world is not.
Yeah, I tried to make it clear off the top. I'm very unsure of how the Leafs do this. This feels like an extremely difficult needle to thread. You've got the face of your franchise, like fully committed as of today, but we have concrete reporting from Elliot Friedman that this is a guy who, when he re-upped on his last deal, he had talked about it 2 years before he had the extension, and there was a caveat that things, if they went off the rails, that was the only out clause in terms of making sure that he was going to re-sign. He also, frankly, just has not been as productive this season or last when he was dealing with injuries. So I think that there's actually a little bit more complicated in terms of what kind of contract you would be willing to offer as an organization. What he wants is a guy who always wants max value. You've got an aged John Tavares, who's still effective, still quality, but certainly no longer like a play-driving second-line center that you can build your team around. You had a tough year with Matthew Nyes. Some of it you could say it was injuries, whatever. You have a forward group that's not very deep. In fact, I would say the opposite is not very deep. They're thin. They're paper thin. You've got some pending UFAs who I'm hoping don't return unless it was Scott Laughton on a cheap deal, but that doesn't appear to be something that's going to get done. You've got an aged blue line. You've got a couple of goaltenders who have had down seasons compared to the ones they had the year before. And you have a front office with no real clarity and a coach that seems like he is very much on his way out fairly soon here, I would imagine. You have all of this without the control of your draft pick this year, without the full control of your draft pick next year. And again, next year, top 10 protected. So if you did want to go the avenue of rebuild or a more extended retool, if that was the way that they wanted to package it, then yeah, next year is actually probably your better shot. But there's so many questions with this team that it's very, very difficult for me to envision a scenario where all of a sudden we're starting next year, right? Or at the beginning of next season, the draft has happened, and there is real enthusiasm that the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be able to put themselves back into a contention spot. Playoffs is whatever, and I still think that would be a bit of a stretch, given that you're going to have to probably add the Panthers back into the mix, a healthier group next year, and that none of the teams that are above you in the standings right now look like they're going to be taking a material step backwards. There's no like older group that is on the precipice of falling apart. And so, to me personally, it's feeling more like a rebuild than a retool by the day. We'll see if that's where the Leafs are expanding their scope beyond just trading guys who have some term on this roster, which again makes it closer to a rebuild, by the way, than it does a retool. Dave Pagnotta, NHL insider and editor-in-chief of Fourth Period. He joins me now. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
Not bad. Not bad. Gearing up for, I would imagine, a pretty exciting week or busy week.
Yeah, listen. Well, actually, let's just start with this, which is, do you think that the Olympic break had a pretty consequential impact in terms of why we're seeing a little bit more late movement this year? It seems like we've had a lot of seasons where the NHL trade deadline, we joke about it as media members heading into it, like, all right, it's the sweepstakes for who exactly, because most of the names get moved. And so we had the Panarin trade that happens before the Olympic break. But since then, it's been pretty quiet. There's only rumblings. Do you expect this to go later in the week, or is things going to start to pick up early here?
I think we're going to see a trickle effect. But yeah, the Olympic break certainly pushed things off a little bit because there were a lot of teams that wanted to see how the first 3-4 games go after the break to determine what direction they're ultimately going to go in. And Toronto's part of that mix. So now that you've got a better indication, and some teams are still going to kind of wait things out another game or so with the deadline on Friday, but wanting to have an understanding what direction we're going in, and if it's not the way we like, if it's not pushing for a playoff spot, then we've got to start opening up these conversations and having those talks involving a number of our guys. And you throw a lot of teams kind of in that mix: Toronto, Columbus, San Jose, Seattle, LA, and so on, just wanting to have a better understanding as to where they fit. And, at that point, we start to see activity on that front. But that kind of, log jams things up for a little bit or puts a bit of a dam towards things. And now we're going to start to see these conversations start to open up a little bit more vigorously.
So starting with the Leafs, how much have these 3 games changed the conversations that you're hearing around them?
I think it's amplified them. I don't think it's changed because I think Toronto's messaging was, we will listen on a number of our guys. No guarantee we're going to make any type of sell-off type moves just yet, but we're at least willing to listen to understand what the market has to bear. Now that they've lost these 3 in a row, I think they're going to be a little bit more aggressive in that stance and say, all right, give us a call. We're going to have these conversations involving a number of our players and kind of go from there. Now, I'm not expecting the big boys to be going anywhere up front in terms of Nylander, Matthews, and Tavares and Nyes. But would they listen on everyone else? Seems viable. Are they going to listen on pretty much everyone on that D-core? Seems likely. Curious about goaltending. Do those conversations start to percolate and heat up? I think Toronto's at least willing to have those types of conversations. And, talking to a few people around the league, it's not just the McMahons and the Lautons on expiring deals that are prime candidates. There are others on this team that have generated interest and that have been engaged in these conversations, be it OEL, Simone Benoit, Nick Waugh, and others.
So that makes sense, right? If you're in the position that the Toronto Maple Leafs are in, and again, you don't want to overreact to 3-game samples really ever in professional sports, especially in 82, soon to be 84 game seasons. But this is not this is a culmination of things that have now been happening for years, right? In terms of what we're seeing right now, and especially over the course of this entire season. So the idea that you wouldn't be taking calls on certain players who have term, that's kind of nutso behavior to me outside of your core pieces, right? You don't want to make one of those moves right now, especially with the stability of your front office. But it also does lead to the conversation of well, if you're trading, say, guys like Oliver Ekman-Larsson or guys like Brandon Carlo, you're having conversations on players that are here next year, years that if you're under the guise of a retool would be fairly useful for you in trying to compete. Doesn't that signify to you that the Leafs might be a little bit more open-minded from a top-down position, that this might not be a team that's trying to contend for a Stanley Cup next season?
Well, I think the idea is to get back on track for next season. And clearly the ingredients that they have put together right now aren't working. Or they're not meshing together. So you might as well listen on those types of pieces and then try to fill up your cupboard and then utilize some of those pieces, or go out and find new ingredients to add to this team next season to get them going in the right direction and to build something that's going to make them considerably more competitive consistently than they are this season. And you mentioned that 3-game losing streak right now. You don't want to overreact to that. It goes beyond that.
Of course.
It goes back to when, after they had that road trip and they did well on the road in mid January, excuse me, and then coming into the end of January at home, getting smoked consistently. Yeah, they won those 3 on the road afterwards, but they lost 4 in a row. So in a 10-game span, they've won 3. Not good, not ideal, not for a club that's trying to push for their playoff lives. And that inconsistency all season has just reared its head again. So you listen on those types of pieces. Like I think it's going to be, it's going to take a pretty significant offer for them to move out Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who's been their best defenseman. He doesn't want to go. He wants to stay and help course correct this going into next season. But if a team is willing to overpay, Brad Treliving is going to listen. It's going to take a significant deal for them in their view to make that type of move. Others, though, they're going to listen on those guys. So Carlo, McCabe, Benoit, etc. on the blue line, you're going to be willing to listen and have those conversations. Some guys have no trade protection, and it's going to play a bit of a factor. But you're going to listen on those guys, and you're going to listen on some of the other guys up front. We've known, for a good portion of the season, Michelli's been available, Domi's been available, Carlo, and so on. So those guys, coupled with everybody else, the Toronto could be pretty active over these next 4 days.
Yeah. So again, you have to listen. Like, you're not in a position where you can't. And also, like, man, if you found out, like, if your reporting was, hey, the Leafs aren't even listening on Oliver Ekman-Larsson or Brandon Carlo right now, people would be apoplectic. It would be like, you're not doing your due diligence as a general manager. But let's try to narrow this down to what is more likely heading into this thing, because that's the real question mark surrounding OEL specifically, right? Is, hey, ultimately, can he play the right side? Sure. But he's a left shot D, and a lot of contenders have left shot defensemen. He's someone that Toronto wants a big price for, and there's probably only a few markets that OEL actually wants to go play for to compete in and move at this point of his career. Do you think it's like, let's put it this way. One of OEL or Brandon Carlo gets traded. Both of them get traded. Neither of them get traded. Which of those 3 scenarios is most likely to you?
I think Carlo. Because I think because his name's been out there a lot more. There's been more of a willingness to listen on Brandon Carlo this season overall than there has on OEL. Those conversations have only picked up in the last month with respect to Oliver Ekman-Larsson in terms of getting to a somewhat of a serious state. I think it's more geared in that direction. Again, it's going to take a pretty substantial offer for the Leafs to consider moving Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And they know he wants to stay. So you factor that in. He's been your best defenseman. Is this a piece that is going to help push us in the right direction next season if we bring in other elements to help complement the D-core, the guys up front, and so on? That's what they have to juggle and evaluate as well. But again, if it's an offer that's just too good to be true, or good enough to that they can't refuse, then it's a different story. But in that respect, you're talking about a bit of an overpayment. I think, as I said, Brandon Carlo's name's been out there earlier on in the season. Are they going to move him with another year on his deal? Is he more appealing because of that for other teams? And is his struggles this season situational? Is it a complement of what else is going wrong with this team that's affecting his game? Because remember, we came in last season from Boston. He did well. He was a pretty sound defenseman for the Leafs after they acquired him. This season's been a bit of a, kind of Oppo City, but it is, some players get into that mix. And again, he's not the only one that struggled this season.
Yeah. Listen, I think that there's a very strong case to trade both, given if you get a significant trade package back, because teams are more likely to overpay at the deadline than they are in an offseason. So if your thought process is like, we're probably moving off of Brandon Carlo, my advice to them would be, do it now, because the prices that you're going to hope for come the summertime, they're not going to be as high. Come the draft, they're not likely to be as high. That said, the reason why we're so focused on the 2 of those guys and why there's hope for people like me that they do move off of both is not just like an age or performance or whatever. It's that if you look at the rest of the roster, there's not really anybody of major consequence that they're going to be able to move and get like a real asset cash back for. And so when you're saying, hey, like it's got to be something of significance for Brandon Carlo or for Oliver Ekman-Larsson, for OEL, do you view it as materially different than what it would be for Carlo? Like in terms of, what are we talking about, a first and a prospect here? Are we talking about less than a first and a prospect? Like, I would imagine that a year less term for Brandon Carlo, that the idea would be you'd be getting a smaller trade package than the one that went out the door to acquire him.
It would be, yeah, for Brendan Carlo, you're looking at a lesser overall package than what you paid for him.
Mm-hmm.
For OEL, you're looking at probably a 2 to 3 prong type of return. You're probably going to ask for a first round pick or equivalent value, a prospect and an additional asset for OEL, and the first two variations will dictate what the third could potentially be, unless those are two higher end assets. Then you're going with the two. For Carlo, you're probably looking at a high draft pick and a prospect. Probably not going to recoup a first round pick, but the one thing I will say about this market, and what doesn't, and mention that what doesn't get completed, and this isn't just exclusive for Toronto. I think this is league wide. What doesn't get accomplished ahead of the deadline may get accomplished around the draft and the beginning of July.
Sure.
Reason being, there's a decent amount of sellers right now, but there are a lot of assets that are available in the market. So teams like Vancouver and St. Louis, for example, have multiple pieces, 5, 6, 7 pieces that they're willing to listen on and move. Not all are going to move, but they have more pieces that are flooding the market. So teams may look at this and go, well, I can pay X, Y, and Z for OEL, but I could just pay X and Y for that player, and for Justin Falk, for example, instead. With groundwork being laid now, you look at what's coming in the summer with respect to free agency. It is not a deep pool across the board. So what may get foundationally done in conversations now could escalate in the summer, or around the draft or around free agency, because of how shallow that free agent pool is, and teams aren't going to be able to necessarily fill any of their voids via free agency. They're going to have to revert to the trade deadline. And I think this is a trend that we're going to start to see, might begin this summer, but see over the years, because of the cap going up. So many teams have that extra money to retain their own assets. They don't have to necessarily, go the free agent route. Some of these teams, because of how shallow that pool is, may look at this and go, we only have 2 direct targets that 30 other teams want. We lose on them. We're going to have to shift our focus to the trade market. And that's where things may get a little bit busier than normal in the first little bit of July. But this is, obviously a wait and see mode, because we've got to see how this week kind of plays out.
So that's always felt like the read when it comes to Morgan Riley, right? Like if you were going to ask him to waive his no move, and if you were going to shop him, that it was going to happen in the offseason. Do you think that the Leafs would go to him, or that there would be any interest league-wide to acquire Morgan Riley this week?
I think the Leafs only go to him if they're presented with an offer that just kind of knocks their socks off right now. If a decent enough offer, a significant offer comes across the table that makes Brad Treliving really think about this, then they go to Morgan Riley and say, look, we've got an opportunity here. What do you think? Take, a couple days or take the day or whatnot to think this over. I think those conversations happen more exponentially in the summer. I think there's going to be a conversation at the end of the season with the team and the player to determine what he wants to do. Would he be willing to go in any direction outside of Toronto? Now might be a little premature, and I haven't heard too much with respect to definitive talks, serious talks surrounding him. But that's not to say that over the course of this week, in the next 3.5 days, that if a team approaches Toronto, that they won't consider it. But ultimately, once that happens, then they go to the player in his camp and say, here's the opportunity. What do you think? And he's totally within his rights, because of his no move, to say, I'm not really into it right now. I want to wait till the summer, or I just don't want to do this. But I don't think they go to him until they feel they have something concrete that would force their hand in order to pull the trigger on some type of deal.
Yeah, that seems to be the case with anybody who has term, right? Like that they don't want to get, like it would probably be the same with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Like that they're not just sitting here being like, hey, give us the list. That it's, hey.
Well, he has his, just with respect to OEL,
list.
his list was submitted in July.
Okay.
So the Leafs know the options that are available for them with OEL.
And how many teams is it?
It's a 16-team no-trade list, so half the league, effectively. 14 teams or 15 teams, whatever it is, that he can get traded to. So I believe Toronto has that list. I believe it was presented in July, but that's just normal work. Guys with those lists, sometimes they have to submit them at a certain date. They've got that. Now, if it's a team that's off that list, same situation as Mo, then you go to the player and say, here's the opportunity. What do you think? But a little bit different with OEL, because they've already got a good understanding of what their options are already.
Yeah, a bit more or less reluctant to waive a no move because I actually just want to be free of this as well because, my God, who would want to be playing in this at this very moment? So I want to keep McMahon and Lawton separate from this because they're the pending UFAs. You mentioned they've kind of been in the mix this entire time. But do you get the sense that there's any league-wide interest in any of the Leafs' other forwards of players that would be available to them? Because from the outside looking in, I just don't know why a team would want, like, Michelli or, Joshua unless you were basically giving absolutely nothing back. But I don't even know why you would prioritize that.
Right. I think there are a couple pieces that are attractive for some contending teams that want to kind of deepen and strengthen their bottom six. And that's Nick Waugh. I think Steven Lorentz also is a player that some teams kind of look at as a solid type of addition to a bottom six to a fourth line. What those price tags are, for those players, I'm not sure. But those are a couple players that I think, some teams have interest in or have at least targeted and started to poke around on. So, again, you look at those types of teams that have those types of pieces outside of, as you mentioned, outside of Lawton and McMahon, who have definitely generated interest. Those are two other pieces that I suspect some teams around the league are looking at going, that might be an option for us to pursue in these coming days.
With respect to Lawton, do you have any clarity as to what the Leafs are looking for in return or what his value appears to be around the league?
You're probably looking at, a second round pick and a prospect type return for Scott Lawton, who brings a lot of intangibles on and off the ice. I mean, he's a glue guy in the room right now. Teams know that. Teams know what he brings to the table. And if you're a contending team that can add that caliber piece, what these players, especially if you're cup contenders, what these players bring on the ice is pretty much as important as what they bring off the ice. Can you mesh in the room? Are you going to, glue? Are you going to, connect with our group and bring that glue type energy and be an extension of this group? Or are you going to be, you're not going to jive too well? Like a lot of these teams don't want to mess with the flow and the mojo that they've built over the season. They want to find those complementary pieces that fit on and off the ice. Lawton checks a lot of those boxes, if not all of them, especially with the off-ice element. So for a team that's looking to bring in somebody for the third or fourth line who's also interchangeable, we know he can play the center, we know he can play the wing. You look at some of the teams that are trying to shore that up. And I'm not saying these are the teams that have expressed the interest, but this is the caliber of player that some of these teams are looking at league-wide. You look to a Colorado, you look to a Buffalo, you look to a Pittsburgh, you look to an Edmonton and so on. See, those are the type of pieces, or this is the type of player that some of these teams are looking at. And it wouldn't surprise me if they poke in on him. But I think the price tag will be similar to Carlo, less than what they paid out for him.
But would you agree that he is the most likely Maple Leaf to be traded?
I think he's a great candidate. If he's the likeliest, I'm not sure at this stage, but I think he's a prime candidate to be traded because of his contractual status, his cap hit right now. With Philly eating a chunk of that when he was traded in. I would say that he's definitely a prime candidate.
Well, the reason why I framed it as likeliest is because of the conversations that are happening right now around Bobby McMahon, right? Which is, the Leafs could re-sign him, the Leafs could bring him back, but there's numbers being floated out there of like around $5 million a season, and the cap's gone up. But if you're looking at the Leafs right now and you're trying to think, all right, what are the solutions moving forward? Like, who do you want to have around? I can't say that paying Bobby McMahon $5 million a season on a 5-year term as he's turning 30 years old is overly attractive to many people here. Maybe some. Like, I don't know. I haven't heard from those people. But from within my inner circle of the people who are having these conversations, it's not like, I really hope that they go this avenue rather than just trade him for the best offer. Are you reading that more as a smokescreen? Because it's hard not to feel like a little bit of it is that element like, well, we could keep him if you're not willing to pony up.
Yeah, 5x5 range has been the number kind of floated around with respect to what that market value may be, especially come July. But I was told late last week that that's unlikely to happen for the Maple Leafs. That if their camp is adamant about that type of a contract, that it won't happen in Toronto. probably looking at more around the $4 million AAV range. With term, I'm not sure exactly what the mindset is from Toronto's side with respect to term. But, if his camp is kind of steadfast on 5x5, I was told that won't happen in Toronto, which makes him more likely another prime candidate to be moved ahead of the deadline. But those conversations were made fluid. I was told there's still time, kind of going into the weekend to kind of figure things out. So they're still back and forth between those two sides. And I think the factor with respect to having those conversations still ongoing is just taking into account what the free agent market is going to look like.
Yeah.
You're going to have so many other holes you're going to fill. Do you want to potentially lose a 20 to 25 goal scorer without knowing you've got a decent enough shot to replace that in some capacity via free agency? And I think that's another element that Toronto is weighing. But, that being said, if the money just doesn't fit, then you try to max a return. I know it's been floated around that they want a first-round pick as part of this. I don't know if that's going to be realistic for them to actually execute and obtain. But again, 3.5 days to go, 4 days until the deadline. Sometimes if options run out for other teams, they circle back and they pay the price. We'll see kind of how those develop.
Well, the only feeling I have in terms of trying to read all of this from an outside perspective is that if you're Bobby McMahon and the league is telling you that they're not willing to sacrifice a real asset to acquire you, right? Like league-wide, even though you've scored that many goals. I would think that for him and his camp that this would be a little bit of an indicator like, hey, maybe we're not going to hit the number that we dreamed about. And being in this situation in Toronto to finish the season, like I'm not really sure how other groups are going to be able to evaluate what it is that they're getting from McMahon from here on forward. Like from his standpoint, you would probably want to be on a contending team so that you could potentially maximize your value. Because if you go somewhere and you're a real contributor, of course, more teams are going to want to pay you than if you're in Toronto. You end up with 25 goals and 6 of them are empty netters, and we're looking at it being like, maybe. I'm not really too sure about it. But yeah, like, do you think that league-wide, if he's trying to get that $5 million, that's going to be a smart bet for him?
I think there's an opportunity to pull that off in the summer again because of the shallow pool and how many teams will be looking to add that secondary scoring type of piece. And what he's shown is that he can keep up with the big boys. He can be interchangeable up and down the lineup, first line, second line, third line. Situationally, he can be deployed in different environments. So with that flexibility in his game, and the fact that he can keep up with the bigger boys and continue to contribute, some teams may say, well, if we give him more consistency with some of these guys, he might be able to hit 25 for us on a consistent basis year after year. So I think that number, I think the $5 million AAV is in and around ballpark of what he could potentially generate in free agency. It all depends on term. Now he does like it here as well. So, 4 million AAV on, 5 times 5 is 25. Can he get around 25 million on an overall deal with the Leafs? 4 times 6, maybe you go around 24 million, something along those lines, perhaps. But again, that's what they're going back and forth on, and have to make a determination. It may be, they may view it and say, well, we actually have options A, B, and C in free agency. We feel we're pretty comfortable that we can get at least one of those pieces onto our club. So it might be, and at a lesser price tag than what it would cost us to sign a Bobby McMahon, we might be more inclined to move him, collect some assets, and then go fishing in free agency. That's another scenario that may ultimately play out.
So 2 more from me. You've been really generous with the time. I appreciate it. One is just after that loss to the Senators, I did Leafs talk in the immediacy, and my co-host Sam McKee is sitting there being like, they're gonna have to fire Berube now. Like you can't have 3 outings like that where he gets canned. And he asked me a question. He's like, "Do you think he's there Monday night?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't really think so because this is that level of bad." And then Berube takes the podium and he's like, "Can't teach them heart and I can't teach them will." And it's like, whoa, that's a pretty strong indictment from the head coach of this team. He definitely does not feel like there's really any pathway for him to return. So, why do you think this is taking so long? Why do you think the Leafs are not moving off of him? Do you think that they're going to move off of him before the season ends? What is your understanding of Berube's status?
Well, I certainly question where their mindset was at when, after that game as well, and when there was no practice on Sunday. It was an off day. they had an off day on Friday, albeit a travel day, but still an off day. Having that many in that time scratched the heads of a few and raised some eyebrows. But I think the Leafs, the debate here internally seems to be, if we don't give him the pieces, then what should we expect from the coach? You can use the coach as the scapegoat all you want. If the assets aren't there, if he doesn't have the tools to work with them, is it really his fault? Like, you can maybe argue that, okay, maybe in some situations the response should be better, the response should be different, but at the same time, if the guys aren't willing to do it on the ice, there's only so much you can do. And using the coach as an excuse, you've got to be right at the end of the line here to do it. Like LA, for example, axing, Jim Hiller on Sunday. I mean, that was to the point where they got embarrassed 2 games in a row, absolutely shellacked by the Oilers 8-1 after losing 6-4 to Vegas the night before in a game that they had going into the third period and just completely didn't let it slip away. They gave it away. Ken Holland out there in LA said, all right, well, I guess we have to do this. And they're chanting his name in the stands and they're holding signs up and things like that. When it gets to that level, and that team should be in a much better position than they are right now. By all accounts, especially after bringing in Panarin, and you have those 2 outings. A lot of it, relays back to the coach. I don't know if Toronto is there yet from that side of things, even though these last 3 games have been ugly. But are the pieces there to allow him to succeed, or to at least be like, we should be in a better spot? It's just our system and our structure is failing us, with ultimately the coach.
Yeah,
I think that's what internally they're debating as to, are we giving him a fair shot, or are we just making this another excuse and, figure something out in the summer with somebody else?
Sure.
I think it's more of the pieces and the ingredients I was talking about being sour versus the chef being the one that's cooking wrong.
Well, that's kind of what leads to the final question, and what is the biggest piece in all of this from my standpoint, which is, everyone that was arguing against the Leafs selling was making the case that Brad Treliving would not want to do that, because if he's selling pieces and admitting that this team's not making the postseason, that it was going to be really difficult for him to have a future in Toronto. And if he's not firing Craig Berube, and he is empowered to make some pretty significant swings potentially at the deadline this season, does it bring into question for you whether there is a path for this guy to be the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs next year? Like, do you think that is still hanging in the balance?
Every indication that I've been given to this point is he's not going anywhere right now. And he's being allowed to fix this. I don't think anybody expected, after the summer that they had last summer, and I don't want to use losing Mitch Marner as an excuse, but when you lose that caliber player, I think there's an understanding that it's going to take a little bit of time to get this team back on track, in the right direction. They tried to fill up the intangibles. They tried to fill the bottom 6 and strengthen it. Injuries have played a factor. I haven't seen what this team is capable of from that element, but they have 4 top 6 forwards. You can have a great bottom 6. If you're missing 2 key pieces in your top 6, you're probably going to struggle from time to time. That's been the case for this team. And they've tried finding different pieces, and they've juggled guys up and down. They just haven't, had that level of consistency. Plus the injury factors that have played a role for some of their guys. You don't want to wait too long, and I don't think the leash is too long by any stretch for Brad Treliving. But every indication that I've been given is that they're going to allow him to kind of fix this, and perhaps likelihood give it one more shot. That mindset may change depending on how this week goes and how the season ends up. But to this point, I haven't really been given that indication. So it leads me to believe that he's going to be able to be in a position to kind of right this ship as best he can. But that leash is short. So let's see what happens at the deadline. Let's see what happens in the summer, and then go from there. But again, I think this is a regroup type of scenario. It's a bad year. It's not working out the way we want. The pieces that we put in place just don't mesh well together. Let's move them out. Let's get some assets. Let's refill the cupboard, and let's fill some of these holes with different pieces and see if that puts us back on the right path next season. I
Dave?
think that's where the mentality is.
Again, I really appreciate the time, man. I know it's a really busy season, and good luck with the rest of the week. Thanks, man.
You got it. Thanks, buddy.
David Pagnotta, NHL insider, editor-in-chief of the Fourth Period. Boy. All right, let's go through a couple of these things. One, the McMahon thing. I get it. I know this. It's making me feel like a bozo because of the Bourne conversation where he was like, you got to have a plan beyond just guys going out and who's actually replacing them. And if you're removing 25 goals, even though I'm not like, how are you replacing those goals? What does the forward group looks like next season without Bobby McMahon? He's a good player. I think that he's taken a good step this season. I've liked that he's added more physicality to his game. I think that he's been more consistent. But I can't wrap my head around giving him a real term. Like, again, he's turning 30 years old. And to get him to a $25 million mark, where you're talking to like 4 by 6 years of term for Bobby McMahon, I don't see how that contract is one where you're like, so glad this is on the books, rather than just saying, you know what, you're a pending UFA. It's probably time to just move off of you. Obviously, there's like you're hoping you can bring something back of consequence, but I don't know, man. For me personally, I would rather take a second-round pick and a flyer prospect for Bobby McMahon than giving him a 6-year contract or a 5-year contract. Sorry. When he's at the peak of his market, and part of the argument for him is there's nobody in free agency that we think is better, or we don't think that there's an immediate plan to get better. I think that's bad business. It reminds me of the Rudy Gay trade for the Toronto Raptors, where it was like, the reason why the Raptors traded for Rudy Gay was not because they thought like they were going to build a championship team around him. They were like, well, what else are we going to do? And I hate that line of thinking for a team. And to me, when we criticize Brad Treliving for not having a certain level of creativity, that's the kind of stuff that I would be pointing to and going, the default move can't just be what is easiest and what is the most obvious thing in front of us in that particular time. If you really believe in the guy and you think like this is a great signing, fine, make it that way. But the idea of it being like, well, how are we going to replace 20 goals? That to me, lack of creativity, black mark against you as a general manager, if that's the line of thinking. And that's why I'm not interested in him returning with the Leafs, is because I just, that's the way that I'm viewing re-upping that player. I think what you've seen from him is the maximum of what he is. There's not an added layer. There's not, hey, year over year, this is going to be better. And frankly, like, all due respect to Bobby McMahon, who I think is, again, a fine player, a very fast skater. I think ultimately he's a specialist and he can disappear from some games. He had a really good month this season. That really changed the conversation for him. But he's got to try to go out and get his cash. This is the last time he's going to be able to cash in. And it doesn't appear to me to be a fit with the Toronto Maple Leafs. The defenseman, in terms of the blow them away conversation. So I get what Dave is saying about this year being a little bit different at the draft in terms of being able to optimize a trade, or that more suitors might come along looking for your guys, or that not making a move at the deadline is not closing the door on trading some of those pieces or getting the trade packages that you want for some of those pieces. So I would say like that line of thinking is a good one to have, where you're not just pivoting off of guys for best offer who are under contract for next season, right? Like that all makes sense. I just outlined that it's very difficult to see how this team is going to greatly improve a year from now, how those other pieces that they bring in are suddenly going to make a roster that looks like one of the worst in the NHL, look like a Stanley Cup contender, feels like a reach. It's just that the thing that you have to take into account with the deadline, which is what everyone does, is teams have certainty with their roster. They are more concrete in where they stand in the league and what they need with that group. And in the offseason, generally, there's not that same level of desperation. So if that desperation isn't there, cool, fine. Your decision is an easy one. But I think if it's one where it's like on the fringes of what you want and you have to compromise slightly for pieces like that, when you know that one of them is likely going to move during the offseason, my bet would still be that the offer is going to be higher at a deadline than it is during the offseason. And that especially when it comes to like older guys like Oliver Ekman-Larsson who are having career seasons. Or for dudes like Brendan Carlo, who will now be entering a year where he only has 1 year left of term. You can get 2 shots at him with a right shot defenseman who can play credible playoff minutes. That seems more realistic that you're going to get a higher price than during the offseason. So if they don't move at the deadline, sorry, I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to view that at least one of the two of them not moving at this point would be disappointing. You got to be able to get some assets back. And based on what we're hearing, which is McMahon could end up re-signing, or that the trade package is not going to be overwhelming, that a Scott Lawton type who ends up getting traded because he's a UFA fetches you back a second and probably not a prospect of great magnitude. Like those aren't needle movers. You move in a couple of pieces around the fringes, that's not a resetting of the cupboards. That's not reinvigorating your prospect pool to a degree where you would go into the offseason and feel like you have enough flexibility to get things done. Also, by not doing it and waiting until the offseason, there's also opportunity cost, right? You have certainty if you have those assets now in the pile to be the ones that are making moves come deadline time. There might come pieces during an offseason that you think are available, and you haven't done the work yet to go out and get the prospects and the picks, so you're not even involved in those conversations yet. So I'm big time on you got to make some significant moves now. This team is bad. The rot that is within the organization is very clear. And if you're Brad Treliving and you're trying to inspire faith in the fan base that you are the guy moving forward, if there is no indication that you're going to be fired, then this deadline is going to have to come with some creativity and some thought beyond, well, prices were the prices and we just couldn't move anybody. And we re-signed Bobby McMahon, but we traded Scott Lawton and Simone Benoit. People are going to be like, that's not good enough. You're not selling people on the idea that coming back next year with the same cast of characters is going to be exciting to anyone. The Berube part. I get what Dave is saying that they're saying, right? Hey, is it all his fault? That's always the issue with this, is in firing Berube, it's like, oh, are you saying that the players or they didn't have enough pieces around them and it's not really some of these guys' fault because there's a lack of talent and you're using a coach as a scapegoat for the group? Like, I get that, but I don't really get the sense that that's the way people feel about it. I think that most people have it right, which is Greg Berube, first of all, he won a Stanley Cup. That's something that these guys can't say, like outside of, OEL. I don't know how many guys are on the roster that have actually won one. Certainly not the stars, certainly not the core. So he gets the credit of having the actual bona fides. He's actually accomplished those things in this league. But I don't get the sense that this is like a pure scapegoating. Like, everybody understands that this is a multifaceted, multi-layered conversation. But also, as much as not everything is Berube's fault, like, Berube's right. He can't teach them the will. He can't teach them the heart. He can't make William Nylander play with more attention to detail. He can't make Matthew Nyes ultimately look better than he has this season. But whatever. He didn't bring in all these guys in the bottom six, even though I would argue that there were guys like Dakota Joshua who we were told were Berube ideas and that he did have some say on the roster. So, like, I would say spare me the idea that he's, like, not complicit at all. But he's not done a good job. Like, his team got 2 shots in the first period against the Ottawa Senators. They're not starting games on time, and he does not seem to connect with the group. He also does not seem like a great coach strategically. We've been having these conversations now for 2 years of like, hey, are you really optimizing the way that this roster is technically built from top to bottom with this guy and the way that he wants them to play? And so, yeah, like, he used the Jim Hiller example with Los Angeles. I'm like, yeah, that appears to me to be the situation here. I'm not sure. It certainly doesn't feel like to me, like if they fired the head coach, and even if they got the dead coach bounce where they won a bunch of games and they started to look a lot better, that people were going to materially feel different about the roster or the direction or, the thought that, hey, this is suddenly going to turn it around and the retool is fine and you just need a piece here or a piece there and all of a sudden you're going to be back to contenders. Like, I just don't view it that way. But at some point, there does have to be a little accountability with a coach. And we also live in an era where coaches don't survive the same length. They don't have the same power. There is a lot of turnover with guys who have had their bona fides in the league. So for me, it's like, this feels like delaying the inevitable. Could you imagine they came back next year and they were like, Treliving's the GM and Berube's the coach, but we added a couple of draft picks and we traded Morgan Riley and Brandon Carlo, but don't worry, it's going to be all good. Like, come on, get out of here with that. Anyways, it is Maple Leafs game day, so you can score a Popeyes chicken to sandwich for only $6 in classic or spicy. Make it your new game day tradition at Popeyes. We'll take a quick break, come back, and hit what we missed.
We are your home of the Toronto Raptors. Catch the action on Sportsnet 590 The Fan, streaming on the Sportsnet app and at sportsnet.ca/590.
Tonight on Prime Monday Night Hockey.
We're back, baby.
The world's best are back to battle for a playoff spot.
He scores!
Flyers, Leafs. This should be great. Tonight at 7:30. Prime Monday Night Hockey. It's on Monday. It's only on Prime.
Discover more value at Loblaws and get unlimited groceries delivered with the PC Express Pass. Buy strawberries 1 pound for $1.99 each. Offer ends March 4th. Conditions apply. See flyer for details. Loblaws. Proudly Canadian since 1919.
It's cold out there, folks. Minus 35. Buckle up if you're going out today. And
Leave the winter blues behind when you give and get away at Canadian Blood Services. Escape to a donor center this winter and leave feeling a little lighter, brighter, and better. And when you book and attend a blood or plasma appointment, you have a chance to win round-trip tickets for 2, courtesy of Air Canada Foundation. No donation required. Give and get away this winter. Book at blood.ca/getaway and experience what you get when you give. Conditions apply. See full draw rules for details.
A serious car accident can turn your life upside down, but a team of trusted legal and medical experts can get it back on track. I'm David Himmelfarb, HimPro's managing partner. Let our team of highly rated injury lawyers build you a winning case fast to deliver a big settlement. This proven system for success is the HimPro Advantage, and it's real. Call 833-4HIMPRO or visit himpro.ca today. HimPro, serious results for serious injuries fast.
HimPro.
This year is about feeling stronger, sharper, and more in control. With more than 10 locations across the Toronto area, Game Day Men's Health helps men boost energy, enhance performance, and recover faster. With testosterone optimization, peptide therapy, medical weight loss, and proven performance treatments. No long wait times, no referrals, just care designed around your goals. When life demands you at your best, every day is game day. Book your free consult at GameDayMen'sHealth.ca.
Why BDC for my business? The timing's right. Everything's in motion. Economy's changing. It's all about automation, AI. So I said to myself, take the plunge. Yes, I need a loan, but I also need a hand from a partner who's truly working with me, helping me no matter what comes next. Not later. Now.
Get ready for what's next. With BDC, you get financing and advice adapted to your projects. Discover how at bdc.ca/financing. BDC, financing, advising, know-how.
Sleep Country saved my relationship. Before their mix and match event, I was holding on to the last 2 inches of the bed while my wife practiced sleep karate and our dog dreamed of chasing squirrels. But ever since Sleep Country matched our bed to our needs, everything's changed. She no longer moves around and I no longer wake up on the floor. It's a match made in heaven. Isn't that right, Truffles?
Find your perfect match in the bedroom. Get up to $1,000 off Beauty Rest mattresses at Sleep Country. Hurry, limited time only. Restrictions apply. See in-store or online for details.
Unifor Local 414 points out that March 8th is International Women's Day. This year's theme is Give to Gain, encouraging a mindset of generosity and collaboration and emphasizing the power of reciprocity and support, whether through donations, knowledge, resources, mentoring, or time. Contributing to women's advancement helps create a more supportive and interconnected world. Give support to gain advancement for women and girls. Find out more at internationalwomensday.com. Unifor Local 414, proud supporters of International Women's Day.
With other language learning apps, I was just playing games. I wasn't really learning. Babbel's different.
Babbel was designed by over 200 language learning experts to be the most effective way to learn another language.
Every time I open the app, I can choose to work on my writing, speaking, or listening. And it saves my mistakes for me to review, so I'm constantly improving. Before Babbel, I thought I just wasn't good with languages. But now I'm speaking French.
Save up to 50% on your Babbel subscription when you sign up at Babbel.com. BABBEL.com.
Measles has been on the rise in Canada. It's very contagious and spreads easily through the air. Measles is more than just a rash. It can lead to serious complications. Vaccination provides the best protection against measles. So now's the time to make sure your family's vaccinations are up to date. Let's stop the spread of measles. Learn more at canada.ca/measles. A message from the Government of Canada.
Mark's new store is now open in Etobicoke. Stop by this Saturday and Sunday for the grand opening event. Get 25% off full-priced items store-wide and exclusive Door Crasher deals. Visit Mark's at 193 Vetiver Drive this weekend. Door Crasher prices as marked.
Tonight on Prime Monday Night Hockey.
We're back, baby.
The world's best are back to battle for a playoff spot.
He scores!
Flyers, Leafs. This should be great. Tonight at 7:30. Prime Monday Night Hockey. It's on Monday. It's only on Prime.
Want to stay on top of the Brier? Keep it here on Sportsnet 590 The Fan up until the final draw on March 8th for Daily Brier reports. Presented by your local Ontario Subaru dealers.
Sportsnet 590 The Fan.
All right, wrap up the showtime. Armin's here. What do you think about my Thunder thing? Because you're like a big Thunder defender. I think that they resonate a little bit more with the Gen Zs.
Well, at the beginning of the year, I was on the other side of it where I thought they were getting too much credit.
Yeah.
And I thought we were too quick to say dynasty and this and that.
Yeah, you are a Zag guy. You do love to, like, you and Ennis have the same contrarian gene. I got a bit of it too, where it's like somebody says something right away, you're like, well.
Well, here's this perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, it was definitely dirty, but Lou Dort hasn't been suspended once in his 8 seasons.
You're that?
He's been ejected 4 times.
Come on.
But I think the reputation's on him now. Any little thing he does.
But that play, you would agree, is like, that's not even flow of the game.
No,
you're doing that.
It was Patrick Beverley-esque.
Yes, man. That's what I'm saying. Is that I just saw some pushback from some people. Like, I had one buddy send it to me via DM and was like, there's that joke that Spit and Chicklets started where you go sick league with the NBA, right? Where things happen that are soft. And the impression was from hockey guys that it's like, oh, come on. This is an ejection in the NBA. Like, this isn't a big deal. And I was like, nah, man. If you play basketball or you've ever played basketball at essentially any level consistently, someone doing something like that where it involves your lower body and it's just a targeted stick out shot like that, those are sometimes the riskiest plays that you could make. Like, that's basketball's version of a knee on knee. I'm sorry. Like, that's
it's fighting behavior. It's like if you're at a pickup run, someone does that.
Yeah, that's
you're probably
crazy.
doing the same
that's what I'm
thing.
saying.
Jokic
Like, that's a crazy move for him to do to the league's best player.
That's the thing.
And take a shot at him like that. Like, again, man, if somebody did that to LeBron, we'd be having, like, if somebody did that to LeBron in 2016, there'd be ESPN First Takes doing that for a week solid, being like, what's going to happen with Lou Dort and what's the response around the league? Like, I agree.
Clutch SUVs outside of his house.
I agree with you that, like, this notion that Dort is the dirtiest player in the league is not really fair. I think that he's a really tough and physical player overall. Like, so when you're a tough physical player whose primary prerogative is to defend that way, it's like, yeah, you're going to end up with some plays that are like hard fouls or things. But I've never seen him do something like that before.
Pretty similar to Dylan Brooks, man.
Yeah, but Dylan Brooks is a dirty player.
Yeah.
Like,
he claims it, you're saying. Like, he claims it.
No, but also everyone claims it. No one can deny it. Dylan Brooks is a dirty player.
No more denying it with Lou Dort either, I would say.
I'm saying,
like, he's got to be on his best behavior.
No, that move there to Jokic was rotten. That was bad stuff. But overall, I'm saying the premise of, like, that the Thunder are now kind of the most important team in basketball, not just because they're defending champions, but it's because it's like they now get that different level of attention from all those teams in the regular season.
Yep.
Like, the regular season, it's on the hot seat in terms of, well, do you have to watch any of his games and who are you facing and which stars are on the lineup and who cares about what? And now it's like the Thunder are playing one of the top 3 teams, and it is one of the other top 3 Western Conference teams, I mean, because the Rockets, they're out.
Rockets out.
Rockets done.
Lakers out. 4.
Lakers.
Wolves, listen. Wolves, Thunder, Nuggets, Spurs.
Yes, that's the 4.
And I would throw, let's see this week, the Knicks are going to play the Spurs and the Thunder.
Sure, but
that'll be fun.
But I'm saying, like, that's the Eastern Conference stuff. I'm saying, like, the juice between the Thunder and those other teams is way, way stronger now. Like, if I see that on the schedule, like a Nuggets-Thunder game, and you know me, I watch a lot of Nuggets anyways because, like, I'm a big Jokic guy, and that's part of the reason why I'm like, this is the dirtiest play of all time. Like, if this happened, if this happened to Jaylen Brown, I obviously wouldn't be as mad about it as I am with happening to Jokic, where I had, like, I'm clutching my pearls in that moment, being like, how dare you do this to Jokic? I get it, totally. But those games now matter in every regular season moment moving forward, and because the Thunder have such a deep team and an interesting team, there aren't as many guys that they can just, like, even if they are sitting a couple of stars or their stars aren't healthy, it's still a super compelling game. Anyway, we got to go. We'll hit more tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Tonight on Prime Monday Night Hockey. We're back, baby. The world's best are back to battle for a playoff spot. He scores! Flyers, Leafs. This should be great. Tonight at 7:30. Prime Monday Night Hockey. It's on Monday. It's only on Prime.
Feeling your best shouldn't come with